When is staying alive counterproductive for your team in Overwatch? You might be surprised that dying can be better off than trying to stay alive as long as possible. Today, we will be going through situations where this can be harmful for your team's chances at victory. On capture points like Hanamura or hybrid maps like Hollywood, where the focus is on a single point, having a numbers advantage and a strong initiation to break the enemy's siege is the textbook way to win. For most initial control points such as Temple of Anubis Point A or the first point in Volskaya Industries, the attackers are favored due to the proximity of their spawn. This advantage, however, can be quickly lost and give the enemy an easier time defending. There are commonly two mistakes that players can commit that will result in this frustrating scenario: staying alive too long and being unaware of when to completely back off. The first mistake occurs when players fail to recognize when a teamfight or objective is lost. Many players will needlessly stick around to poke at the opponent or attempt to prolong the capture of a point for as long as possible, which typically causes a loss of life. This usually results in delaying the inevitable capture by a few seconds in the aftermath of a failed fight, as most of the team is dead or attempting to regroup at point B. Needless stalling creates a delay between your own spawn time and those of your teammates and puts your team at a numbers disadvantage when attempting another assault. It is easy to commit this mistake when playing flankers such as Genji and Tracer, but also when playing as heroes who are able to self-sustain like Roadhog. Committing half-heartedly to a lost fight while staying alive and risking being caught out and delaying the time for your team to be as a full unit is counterproductive. It is important to recognize when it is time to run to safety when an objective is clearly lost. When I'm talking about safety, I mean not harassing the enemies from afar and putting yourself at risk of dying. In Overwatch, healing is so strong that the little damage you do actually does more harm than good. You can back off and regroup, or recognize that it is time to die early and respawn at the same time as your team. For example, having a player stay alive as long as possible only to die before your team can regroup as 6 is just as bad as getting picked off early before a fight, and is a huge blow to your team who then has to wait for you to respawn. Another scenario when dying would be better than trying to stay alive is when playing a hero like Torbjorn, who needs setup time to be effective. After the fall of the first point, there are heroes that are severely limited in their usefulness during an escort or the defense of the secondary point. It is better to die and switch to a more effective hero for your team as opposed to trying to stay alive as long as possible. Imagine respawning as Symmetra on Hollywood just as point A is lost and your spawn point moving back to the studio. This leaves you attempting to play as Symmetra during the escort when you could be playing as a more useful hero for this situation. It is better to die here and switch off than struggling to stay alive. In competitive Overwatch, almost all teams wait for a full 6-man before attempting to capture a point or to push a payload. This comes down to their high level of coordination and individual skill, but the same principles of restraint and awareness can be applied by anyone in solo queue. To give your team the highest chance of success while attacking, you need to create as many scenarios as possible where your team has full-on team fights and avoid attempting unnecessary pushes. These include poking at a choke point and getting picked off, fighting with a man down, and trickling in without the entire team. Trickling is a common occurrence when people run straight back onto the front lines from the spawn point without waiting to regroup, throwing off the timing of everyone else's spawn. This is one way how staying alive can be harmful to your team, especially in an uncoordinated environment such as solo queue. This mistake is detrimental not just while attacking control point maps, but also when playing on King of the Hill. Both teams don't have a respawn advantage, so there is even more emphasis on grouping up and avoiding trickling in. Several games can be lost by players who don't know when to concede an objective, stop poking, die, and regroup for a push as a full team. By staying alive and poking at the enemies, you are actually helping the enemy team charge their support's ultimate and leave your team at a resource disadvantage when a full team fight does break out. The same argument can be made while playing as defense, but to a less extent, as sustaining and staying alive is usually all that you can do in hopes that your team can return to the point in time. Being aware of when a point is about to be lost is also important on defense, as staggering deaths can be fatal. For example, on Temple of Anubis, by running back to defend point A when the enemy is capturing the point can leave your team at a numbers disadvantage and allow for the attacking team to easily rush and take point B. The same principle of knowing when to concede and back off or die applies for hybrid maps, such as Hollywood, fluid, where trying to contest the payload at point A can leave your team at a disadvantage during the escort through the Wild West set phase. Sometimes it is just better to die and regroup instead of trying to be a hero and take on 3 people on your own. Staying alive and not doing much while potentially dying at the worst time is an unnecessary risk to take. These mistakes can be avoided by understanding these basic principles that may appear to be obvious, but surprisingly, many players don't seem to comprehend. Having more fights as a full-on team will increase your chances of success, even if this means suiciding off the map so you can respawn with the rest of your team. As tempting as it may be as a Widowmaker or Hanzo, avoid trying to get picks without the rest of your team, as dying on your own, as we've discussed, puts your team at a severe disadvantage when they want to engage the enemy. Avoid poking at the enemy team, as it leaves your allies at an ultimate disadvantage, as you are only helping to charge the enemy support's ultimates. Fall back and regroup instead of staying on the front lines and wasting unnecessary resources like a Reinhardt's shield or Blinks as Tracer while waiting for your team. In conclusion, learning self-restraint and understanding when it is best to die at times can be better than trying to stay alive. Let me know what you think of these tips in the comment box below. And if you like this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. As always, make sure to subscribe to Akshon Esports.